I've spent 1 month with a Nintendo Switch 2, and honestly, I can't stop playing this thing. It's basically all I do in my free time. I have a bunch of thoughts on the Nintendo Switch 2 that I'm going to try and fit all in this video. And you'd think after 1 month the hype for this console would die down and I would just kind of set this thing to the side and let it collect dust and be done with it. And I'm here to tell you that you're wrong. The hype is not down for me. With that being said, I do have some downs about this console and things that seem a little bit weird, but the majority of them are positive. In this video, we're going to be talking about things like the new Mario Kart again, and the new Zelda remasters for the Nintendo Switch 2, because I just feel like that's what many people are playing at the launch of this console. So let's get into Mario Kart, and let me just start out by saying I don't think there could have been a better launch title for the Nintendo Switch 2. I mean, everybody loves Mario Kart. You have friends and streamers getting on together and playing online together. But that doesn't mean it's perfect. I do have some tiny issues with it. And if you go look at my second video on my channel, I do have a 5-minute review on Mario Kart World. And that pretty much shows you how I feel about this game. In my opinion, the Nintendo Switch 2 had a pretty poor launch lineup for games, which is why I think Mario Kart World saved the launch day. Because honestly, it kind of seems like there was really only one new game that launched with the Switch 2, and it could have not been a better game in my opinion. When I sat down and played this game for the first time, which was only minutes after filming my first video on my channel, I actually had a friend come over and play the game with me, and we had an absolute blast. We played for like a solid 6 hours straight. I will leave a link to my friend's YouTube channel in the description. Go check it out if you want to see more content from him. But only a couple days later, I called him up and said, hey, do you want to come over and play more Mario Kart World? And he did, and we played it for another entire day. I cannot stress this more that I think Mario Kart World was the best Nintendo Switch 2 launch game, and I haven't gotten tired of playing it, and it's a month into the console already. Anyway, if you want more on Mario Kart World, feel free to check out my second video on my channel, and let's get into the Zeldas. I'm actually just going to do a quick little review on these games, but The Legend of Zelda is my favorite Nintendo franchise, and seeing these games run in 4K resolution is honestly a dream come true. I heard people saying that they should just wait to release Tears of the Kingdom for the Nintendo Switch 2 launch day, but I think it was just better how they released it instead of waiting another 2 years to release it on the Switch 2. One thing I will say about these games is with the upgrade for the Switch 2, it feels like I'm playing these games for the first time again. In docked mode, you're getting upscaled to 4K resolution and 60 frames a second, and in handheld, you're getting 1080p resolution with 60 frames a second. And people don't realize how much of an upgrade this really is. And I understand them, and honestly, you don't notice the frames upgrade from 30 frames to 60 frames a second until you play the game for yourself. Now let's talk about Zelda notes for a second. Basically what it is it's a section of the Nintendo Switch app that you can go into and select Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild, and you can either use it to help you find shrines or towers or shrine quests, or there is a thing where you can go to different parts of the map and Zelda will have these things called voice memories, and every time you go to a certain location on the map, on your phone, Zelda will start talking you through the app about the section that you're in and what it means to her. By the way, you cannot use Zelda notes unless you have the Nintendo Switch 2 versions of Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, so that's just another reason to buy the remasters of these games, honestly. If I had one thing to say about the Nintendo Switch 2 is it feels like a PS4 Pro or an Xbox Series S in your pocket, which is more than enough to run games like Mario Kart or future games. Both Mario Kart World and the Zelda games showcase how powerful the Nintendo Switch 2 really is and what it's capable of doing. I think I saw somewhere where someone took the Hogwarts Legacy on the Switch 1 and played it on the Nintendo Switch 2, and it was able to run a solid 30 frames a second with a tiny bit of improved resolution. But some games on the Switch 2 just won't run perfectly just because it's on a newer console. That's why they have these upgrade packs for the Nintendo Switch 2 for some games. Basically what I'm saying is every Switch 1 game that you have on the Switch 2 is just going to run exactly like it did on the Switch 1. But Fortnite actually requires you to upgrade to the Switch 2 version of it and won't let you play the Switch 1 version of it. Which is actually good because on the Switch 2 you're getting about 1224p resolution with 60 frames a second docked. And in handheld you're looking at about 900p resolution with 60 frames a second, which is honestly pretty good for a handheld and definitely better than how the Switch 1 was running Fortnite. I did try out the mouse mode on Fortnite and honestly it works really well and feels like a normal mouse. It's a little bit to get used to because you can't use any other button except the right trigger to navigate the entire menu. Plus, mouse doesn't work on any creative maps or anything else than Battle Royale basically. Enough about Fortnite, let's go ahead and talk about game chat. One thing they didn't add with the Nintendo Switch 2 was a way that you could message your friends and ask, hey, do you want to hop on Mario Kart World or game chat or something? That's still not a thing on the Switch 2 and it wasn't a thing on the Switch 1. But from what I've seen, it's basically Discord, but worse. I know you can use the new Nintendo Switch camera to show yourself and be like a little Twitch streamer talking to your friends while you're playing. One thing I will say is that there is a built-in mic on the Nintendo Switch 2, and it actually sounds pretty good from distance, so you don't really need a mic to talk to people. Discord has been doing all of this for many years, but consoles haven't, which is why I kind of appreciate game chat and why Nintendo did this, is because this is just something new that consoles never really had before. Another part of game chat is that you're able to share your gameplay to your friends while you're playing the game, but it only runs at like 15 frames a second. But honestly, would you rather have it or would you rather not have it? I think it's a great addition and it's better than nothing, honestly. Is it needed? No. But is it nice that it's there? Yeah, honestly it is. One thing I absolutely do not like about the Nintendo Switch 2 is its battery life. It sucks. On most games, you're getting about 2 to 3 hours of gameplay on the game itself. But it does kind of make sense because those games are pretty demanding on the console because they're running up to 4K 60 frames a second or even 120 frames a second, which can destroy the battery, and it makes sense why it's draining so quickly. But at the end of the day, the battery is still worse than the Switch 1, and the Switch 1 had about 5 to 9 hours of battery life. But honestly, when are you ever going to sit down and play a game for 5 to 9 hours in one sitting in a handheld mode? So honestly, I think the 2 to 3 hours is perfectly fine for me. Comparing this to other handheld PCs like the Steam Deck only can run a game like Cyberpunk for 45 minutes. And yeah, it technically can run Cyberpunk a little bit better than the Switch 2. But honestly, I would take the way the Switch 2 runs Cyberpunk for 2 to 3 hours than 45 minutes with better performance on the Steam Deck. Talking about the console side of things, I do really love the new Joy-Cons. Just something about docking the Switch and then taking the Joy-Cons off super easy is just way better than having the rails on the Switch 1 and sliding them off rather than just sticking them right back on because the new Joy-Cons are actually magnets. Another thing I'm kind of on the fence about is this little floppy game insert thing that you use when you insert physical games. And honestly, it looks like it's gonna break pretty easily. But after this month, I've gotten pretty used to it. And honestly, it's pretty satisfying to put games into the console now. The last thing I'm gonna talk about in this video is my thoughts on the Nintendo eShop. On the Switch 1 eShop, there was really no filter system to filter out all the shovelware that's on the eShop. And on the Switch 2, it still doesn't have a filter system, but there is a thing called a For You tab that is now available only on the Switch 2, and it changes weekly. And what it does is it gives you games that it thinks you will enjoy playing, and it's like, I don't know, 7 to 10 games or whatever, and it's honestly worth checking out. And if you remember from the Switch 1, trying to scroll down the menu, trying to select games, literally took years. And that's just because of the processor on the Switch 1 wasn't as good. But on the Switch 2, as you're scrolling down, looking through your games, it loads almost immediately, and it's just something about it is just so much better. And one thing you'll notice about recent releases is that it actually puts out the most popular recent releases, and then all the ones that don't really matter that much are stuffed down to the bottom. And on the Switch 1, it was just all recent releases, no filter system whatsoever, and it was just a mess. Another thing that's different on the Switch 2 eShop is there is a Nintendo Switch 2 section and a Nintendo Switch 1 section. So if you're wanting to shop for Switch 1 games, there is an entire section of the eShop dedicated to that. And Switch 2 games have the Switch 2 red border at the top of the game, so you know which ones are Nintendo Switch 2. But from what I noticed, everything else about the eShop is basically the same, which honestly is not a big deal. I kind of like how the eShop is set up. Believe it or not, we are only 15 days away from Donkey Kong Bonanza releasing, and after that we have more titles coming out like Pokemon ZA and Metroid Prime 4, and this new Splatoon game that just got announced called Splatoon Raiders, which doesn't have a release date yet, but if it releases this year, it'll just be another launch title for the Nintendo Switch 2 in the first year. If you haven't gotten a Nintendo Switch 2 yet and you're kind of on the fence about it, tell me what you don't like about the Nintendo Switch 2 down in the comments, along with any other questions you have. And if you do have a Nintendo Switch 2, feel free to leave a comment down below on your first impressions with the Nintendo Switch 2 and how you're feeling about it a month later. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. There will be more videos coming to the channel in the future, and I will see you guys soon. Thank you for watching.